It's time to take your seat in the front row with Mike Vaccaro. Here's your host, Mike Vaccaro.
Hey, thanks once again, Chuck, and welcome everybody in the front row. I am your host, Mike Vaccaro. Behind the scenes, JR Quitman, our creator, producer, and director. Well, again, this is a CLNS Media Network podcast. Be sure to check out other great shows at clnsmedia.com. And also, we invite you to like, to subscribe, to share these shows. Our guests, such great stories that we're hearing with this show. We hope that you enjoy them. And again, we'll share those with your friends, your family, anybody who loves great stories of success and also some failure as well. Today, it's up to episode number 70. And for that, it's Mike Candrea. He is a softball coach, but not just any softball coach. He is one of the winningest softball coaches in NCAA history. Won 8 championships, NCAA championships at Arizona in his 36 years. Also the head coach of the Olympic team. Won a gold medal in 2004, silver medal in 2008. And he shares his story with us and such great perspective in his story with his family, with his faith, and so many good sides to what he has to talk about with his lengthy career. So successful, but it's not just him. It's the players, it's the coaches he coached with and where he coached as well. Such a great story here. Do not miss this one. It's episode 70 in the front row featuring Mike Candrea. Well, Coach, we appreciate your time here. And again, what a great career you've had. You're in a retirement right now, enjoying that, well-deserved. But let's get into your story here. You were born in New Orleans. I guess spent some time there as a kid before you moved to Arizona. Early on, what were you playing athletically? And were you started as early as you were in New Orleans growing up?
Yeah. Well, I was in love with the bat and ball game from day one, so there was no doubt. I grew up with a bat in my hand and a ball in my hand. And in Louisiana, we used to go down the end of the street and we would mow the grass that was there and made our own field. And it was, some of the best times of my life is playing with your friends, and unfortunately today they don't do that enough.
Yeah, certainly. Kids on their gaming machines and everything else, not getting outside, but you were doing that.
Yeah.
Again, at an early age, and at 7, then you moved to Phoenix. What was that move like for you? And did that affect you playing baseball and playing other sports at the time?
Well, the move was crazy. The only thing I knew about the West back then was the Cowboys and Indians, and so all I remember is getting into a station wagon in New Orleans and driving across Texas, which took us, it seemed like a month to get through Texas. But everywhere we would stop, I would be looking for the Cowboys and Indians because that's what I knew about the West. But now I look back and it was truly a gift, especially for the game of baseball, because there was a lot of baseball being played around year-round here, and the weather was a little better, not as much humidity. It was business as usual. Once I got to Arizona, played baseball just about every day of my life and got into high school and actually grade school, played a little basketball, point guard, and went into high school, played football, basketball, baseball, played, multi-sports then you look back at your career and path and you're going, man, I didn't plan it this way, but the good Lord was looking out after me.
Yeah, you eventually stuck with baseball. You were a second baseman. You go to a community college there,
Right.
Central Arizona College. Take us through that, going from high school, multiple sports, and then honing in on baseball and what it was like to play on that level.
Yeah, well, one thing I do remember is about my junior year in high school, they started the Arizona Winter League, and I was one of the first to get a chance to play baseball year-round. And so one of the most devastating times of my life was walking in and telling our football coach that I was going to play baseball year-round, and they weren't real happy with that, but I really felt like, looking at my size, you're 5'9", and I'm definitely not going to be a basketball player. And I was in love with baseball, and it gave me a chance to play the game year round. And that kind of springboarded my opportunity to to go on to Central Arizona College. And the reason why I went there, truthfully, was because back then there was 2 drafts. There was a January draft and a June draft. And so if you went to the junior college, you had, twice the opportunities to maybe get drafted and get a chance to play pro ball. And little did I know the numbers kind of add up where, 1% maybe make it. But I enjoyed my time at Central, and then I got talked into coaching at that time. I had elbow surgery. I had Tommy John surgery before Tommy John. So they didn't name it Mike Candrea. They named it Tommy John. But anyway, went through that. Took me about 2 years to recover from that, and it kind of ended my baseball career. But I was fortunate that a gentleman, Kenny Richardson, asked me to come coach in junior college baseball. So in 1976 was my first year of coaching. And we won a national championship that year. So I'm thinking, man, this is a pretty good gig, and it's pretty easy. Little did I know it'd get a little tougher.
Yeah, it certainly gets tougher as you go up. But as you said, assistant coach of baseball, and then you became the head coach of softball at Central Arizona. Take us through that conversation and what led to you getting that head coaching job.
Well, it was funny you asked, because it was by accident. George Young was the athletic director at Central Arizona College. And George was a 4-time Olympian, by the way, won the bronze medal in Mexico City. And I remember him walking in my office one day and said, "Mike, I need your help." And I go, "What's that, George?" He goes, "I need you to coach the women's softball team." And I'm going, "What did I do wrong?" I said, I'm a good baseball coach. And I had no idea of ever coaching the female athlete or coaching softball. Knew nothing about it. And I said, "Well, he was explaining to me the reasons why. And I was an assistant coach. It would give me a chance to run my own program. Title IX was coming in support for women's athletics. And it all kind of made some sense. And I decided to do it for a year. I said, "George, I'll do it for a year, but that's it." And I did it for a year. And after that year, we had a decent year. But I said, "Man, if I go find a pitcher, I think I can win this thing." And so I hook and sinker, man. I go out and I recruit Connie Clark, and Connie from Greenway High School. Connie was, as you well know, went on to be a very accomplished player at Cal State Fullerton, and the head coach at University of Texas, the very first coach there. And so I recruited her, and we won back-to-back championships, and that launched me into the University of Arizona, where I spent the next 37 years.
Yeah, 1981 to 85, you're the head coach at Central Arizona. Take us through that first meeting with your softball team. As you said, you didn't know much about it. You never had coached women before, but what was that meeting like?
Well, it was I didn't know any different. I said they're athletes, and I know the bat and ball game. And so the one thing I did know is that I'm going to be a fundamentalist. I mean, we're going to teach them how to play the game the right way. And then I had to go out and kind of learn fast pitch softball. So I decided I would go out and watch the men play. And I remember one summer, there was a tournament in Kimberly, Wisconsin. It was the International Softball Congress World Championship. I went out and watched the best, and that's where I really kind of learned the nuances of the game, because I used to think, why is everyone bunting in softball? Can't they hit, And then I go and I find out the speed of the game and the shortness of the field and the short game, a lot of the little differences is where I picked it up. And then so I was always been a student of the game, and I decided to bring it back and started doing some of that stuff at Arizona. And, speed kills. Speed doesn't go into a slump. And that's one of the neat parts about softball.
What was the bigger adjustment, going from male to female or going from baseball to softball?
Well, I would say male to female. I think, and I'll tell you why, because coaching baseball, junior college baseball, every kid thought they were going to be in the big leagues. So they weren't great students. They didn't take their education seriously, and therefore they put all their eggs in one basket. And I remember sitting around and listening to grown men cry about, they had no future because they didn't finish their education. And it was pretty sad. And so real quickly, I realized that, men are pretty cocky and they do things in spite of you. And then I go to the women and I'm going, my God, they're like a mound of clay and you can mold them any way you want because they don't have any bad habits. And actually after about a year, I realized, the big difference is that men have to play good to feel good. Women have to feel good to play good. And so the emotional side was a big part of it, and learning how to tap into that emotional side and turn it into a positive. I started enjoying that piece of it because I never had any problems with academics. They're all good students because they knew that softball was not going to be the end of their life. They were going to walk away with an education and use softball as a platform. And so it was a much easier thing, and then I really liked the idea of having someone that didn't have any habits that you could, teach them the right way and they would pick up on it. Very coachable, but very emotional, and so you had to kind of understand the ups and downs that you were going to go through. And I realized that I could turn those emotions into positives much easier than I can the ego,
Well, you did that for a long time at Arizona. As you said, 1986, you started there, retired in 2021. When you started, you were at a rec field, right? And now they're playing at a field that bears your name.
Yeah.
What did it take to get that program to where it is now and to really build it, as you said, maybe using Title IX as a big way to do that?
Well, when I got to Arizona and I left a 10-year teaching position at a junior college, and what made me want to chase Division I softball, I have no idea, but it was the thing to do. If I was going to coach, I wanted to coach at the highest level. And at the time in softball, the highest level was Division I. And so I had the opportunity to come to Arizona. And I remember the first day going out to practice, and I walk out to the field. It was a rec field, basically, chain link dugouts and seating for about 50 of your best friends. It was completely different. But the big thing was I walked out there and there's a bunch of people on the field and I'm going, hey, I've got practice at 2:30, man. And the guy goes, well, you're going to have to wait till the PE class is done because we use this field also. So I realized right then and there that, I had to build from the ground up, and, I had to drag my own field. And I was used to doing a lot of that, but still, you think you're going to the major leagues and you're really not, and so we started off on this field and took a lot of pride in it and built the program. And George Young always told me, don't complain about what you don't have, take what you have, make the best out of it. And then in 91, we won a national championship, the first one. And I remember a gentleman coming into my office after that and says, Mike, I want to help your program. What do you need? And I go, well, Mr. Hillenbrand, this is kind of what I'm thinking right now. And I had this picture of a stadium drawn on a map. On a napkin. And I said, this is what I think we need. I said, if we build this, we can put people in the seats and we have a good product. And he goes, well, let me think about it. He came back a week later, wrote me a check for $1.2 million. We built the first Hillenbrand Stadium of its kind. And of course, we were in that and very proud of that for a lot of years. And then, finally had the opportunity to really upgrade to make it the way you really want it and make it more fan friendly now that we were drawing 3,000 people at games. And that's what you see today, the culmination of a lot of hard work, some dreams, and some very gracious donors that put some money in and helped us build, I think, one of the best facilities in the country.
And it's got to mean more for you to have your name on it, not just because of the wins of those accomplishments, but again, because you were involved kind of getting it all from the ground up. Is that the way you look at it when you see your name up there?
Oh, I do. And in fact, I was one of the people that donated for the project. So, I've got some blood, sweat, and tears into it. And it's not often that you get a chance to kind of live through history. And that's really the thing that I'm blessed about, is that I was able to watch our sport grow and be a part of it. And then you go to Arizona, and I've been a part of watching it built, and so it's been kind of a unique experience for me, and very humbling, but I'm very gracious that I had the opportunity to make a wise decision and go into softball and do it.
Yeah, certainly it has benefited you in your career. And as you said, 1991, your first of 8 national championships. What was the first one like? Is that the one maybe you remember the most fondly because it was your first?
Well, I remember that one because it was blue-collared athletes. I mean, it was Arizona athletes. We had a few California athletes sprinkled in there, but we definitely weren't the 5-star group that, had NIL money and all the things you see today. It was just a group of, in fact, I went to the junior college level to bring a bunch of them in because that's the only thing that I really knew back then. And there was just a lot of gratification watching that team compete. And, we face a Lisa Fernandez who was undefeated, and we're going, there's no way in hell we're going to beat her. But back then it was only a 1-game showdown. And you have to beat them once, and I remember that game. We scored 1 run on 2 hits. They had we had 1 run on 1 hit. They had no runs on 2 hits, and we win, but that was softball. That was fast pitch softball back then. White ball, white seams, 40 feet, pitcher dominated game. Probably not the best game to watch because there was not a lot of offense. And then watching the game change to the optic yellow ball with the red seams, moving the mound back to 43 feet. And now you look at the bats, the equipment that these kids are using. I mean, anyone can hit one out of the ballpark, which is kind of crazy. So my big thing right now is we need to move the fences back to 225 all the way around. Would be a better game. Put a little premium on the outfield play and not have pop-ups go out of the field. But yeah, that was it, and it's just been an amazing sport to watch grow. And I think in 91, we had 1 game on television. That was the championship game. And then ESPN started really helping this sport grow. And each year there were more and more games on television, where now today there's tons. I mean, any day you can turn on TV and see a softball game. And you go from college softball to Athletes Unlimited, it's just, it's a game that is very fun to watch. And the big thing is we got to keep it in that 2-hour window because our game's starting to get a little longer too. They've shortened baseball. And so we've got to kind of watch what we're going to do and make sure that we keep this game, where TV really likes it.
Yeah, and TV does, as you said, so much more coverage now than there was back when you began. But you look at your career, 1,674 wins. You were the first to 1,500 wins. You're second all time now. Carol Hutchins at Michigan surpassed you since you retired. But 24 World Series appearances, the 8 championships we talk about, 3-time National Coach of the Year. You're in 6 Halls of Fame. Most recently, this past fall, inducted into the Arizona Athletic Hall of Fame. What are those numbers as you hear all those? What does that mean about what you were able to do at Arizona, but as you said, for the sport of softball as well, and what we see now as that sport?
Growing up as a young kid, my dad always said, whatever you choose to do, be the best at it. And so I've always been driven to try to do the best job that I could and leave it better than when I found it. And, I just feel like I was able to walk through this magical journey because this sport was really at its infancy stage, when I first found it. And then to leave it now and look back and, you look at the College World Series today and 2 million viewers watching a game, you never dreamed that would ever happen. But I can see why it has, because we've had some great athletes, like the Jennie Finches of the world and Kat Ostermans and Monica Abbott's and Nancy Evans. I can go on and on and on. We've had so many athletes that are not only great athletes, but they've given of themselves to help grow the sport. That's the one thing I like about softball is, any of these young ladies that I've been able to coach have also done a great job in going to the grassroots and help grow the sport. And that's why the sport is in a better place now than it was.
And you mentioned Jennie Finch. She's one name that even if you're not an enthusiast of softball, you know who she is. What was it like coaching her, especially around the notoriety that she brought to the sport to you guys as well? Was that a plus? Was that a hindrance at times?
No, it was definitely a plus. I mean, Jennie is one of those athletes that has it all. I mean, and when I say she has it all, she's a very talented athlete. Number one, she's a very beautiful young lady, inside and out. And I think the thing that impressed me the most about her is her ability to have the balance that she has in her life and be able to spread that in the softball world. And, to me, that's a big part of what I do, because I've learned over the years that, your family's at the center of everything that you do. And you better enjoy that. And I think sometimes as a coach, I wasn't really good at balancing that. I was striving to be the best at what I did. And sometimes I lost out in watching my own son play the game and my daughter playing the game and stuff like that. But I think Jennie was one that really made me understand that you can have balance. You can spend time with your family, and you can enjoy your faith, and to me, that's a big part of my life. And unfortunately, when I was pursuing that dream, sometimes it was hard to balance that. And so I've learned from athletes like Jennie Finch and Leah Miko, who have kind of showed me that it can be done, And I think today you look at the athlete today, and that's a big part of the big piece that you have to have, is that balance. Jordy Ball leaves to go back to Nebraska because of family. And I can understand that, because it is tough, because, a national championship doesn't change your life. And I used to think that as a young coach, I used to judge my success on whether we won a championship or not. And I realized that the sun went up and went down no matter whether I won or not, but when you're in that moment, you think that that's what it's all about. And so the one thing I realized throughout this process is that, I used to agonize on every defeat, but I would blow through the victories. I would just keep moving forward. I never enjoyed the little small moments. And as you get older, you tend to celebrate every day, because every day is a gift. And so I think there's a lot of that stuff now that coaches understand are a big piece of that, making that athlete feel good physically, mentally, and emotionally, because, this group has gone through some tough times. I've never had to go through COVID as a young kid. And I see the impact it's had on others. And so I think there's a lot more to coaching today. And I think the big part of it, if I could sum it up, is I think you have to coach the person first before you can coach the athlete, because every person has some need, emotionally, mentally, whatever it may be, that has to be taken care of before you can actually help the athlete physically. And I know when I first started, all I worried about was recruiting the very best athlete. And if they had the highest skill set in softball, they were good. But then I've learned now there's a lot more to it. And I think with COVID and the social aspect has changed. And so there's just so much more now that goes into it. And so I commend these coaches today to have to balance. I mean, it's a balancing act of not just coaching the athlete, but you've got to help the person, and you've got to really find out what that person needs to be successful, because I think today's kid doesn't really care. I mean, yeah, they're driven, but at the end of the day, they have other needs than a championship. So hopefully that process that you're using to build a championship environment also includes taking care of the details of the athlete, the person, and keep them safe.
Again, for you, 36 years at Arizona, 5 years before that at Central Arizona. At what point in your career did you have that perspective to take a step back a little bit and to spend more time with your family and to, again, you bring your faith into it more? At what point in your career did that happen for you?
Well, I'll tell you, it took a while. In fact, I can take you back to the time that it kind of happened. I was coaching the Olympic team as an assistant coach in 1994, getting ready for the Olympic Games in Atlanta in 96. So I was an assistant to Ralph Raymond. We were in St. John's, Newfoundland. I'm in this little dorm room for a month and just won a championship at Arizona, coaching the best team in the world, and I'm miserable. I couldn't figure it out. And it was ironic because I went home and, I walked in the house and I'd been gone for a month and a half, and my son didn't say, "Dad, welcome home." He said, "Dad, can we talk?" And I go, "Oh my God, what happened?" And he said, "Would you consider dropping out of the USA coaching pool so that you can watch me play baseball?" Mm-hmm. And that's when it kind of changed. I said, "You know what? My kids need more than just this coach, and I've never been really good at that, even till today. I look back and, I was honored as a Father of the Year last year, and I kind of look back and there's a lot of deficiencies that I had because of this stupid game that I was in love with, but it's the only thing that I knew. I had a passion to be the best at what I did, and I love the game. And if you're going to do it, you might as well be all in. But on the other hand, it takes its toll in other areas. And so I'm constantly playing catch up with my kids, and it's almost embarrassing to talk about it, but it's reality. And I think anyone that pursues anything at this highest level is going to have a tough time trying to balance that.
I think any coach, I'm a broadcaster that travels with teams here at UNCW. I know what you're talking about. You miss things because you're driven to be the best at what you're doing. And hey, we have jobs that aren't 9 to 5. You don't have the weekends off.
No. Yeah. I always tell people that I've never worked a day in my life because I've followed my passion. Mm-hmm. I've done what I love to do. And you know what? The other thing is I never worried about time. Time was not even an issue. It's like, I don't care, whatever it takes, to get the job done. Mm-hmm. I'm committed to it. And then you look back now and it's, as you get older, time gets pretty precious, because I look back at mom and dad are gone, and God, you'd love to have a conversation with them. But unfortunately, when one of the great things that I did is I had some property that my house was on, and I built a guest house and had my mom and dad move in to that guest house in their later years. And I at least got a chance to go have a cup of coffee with them.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad I did that, because otherwise, you'd be missing them now, but there's not much you can do.
Yeah. That cup of coffee probably more valuable than the cup of coffee you could have had in Major League Baseball, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, you mentioned the Olympics, and that was a big part of your career as well. 2004, you became the head coach. You were the head coach of an outstanding team. Gold medal team, Athens Olympics, outscored opponents 51-1 to win that gold medal. Did you go in to it thinking, okay, we're going to run through this?
Yeah.
Was that your mindset?
Well, my mindset was, what am I doing here? I'm taking over a program that all they've done is win gold medals, so if I had a fear of failure, I definitely wouldn't have been the guy for that job. So the one thing I look at is it was an opportunity for me to coach the very best players in the world. And I think for the first time, we were going to get a chance to see our athletes compete when they were in their prime at 27, 28 years old, because that was never the case. And the other thing was that we're going to be able to train full time, that we found a way to fund them enough that they could invest their time and efforts on the game of softball and make us the very best team that we could. And so walking in, I was very, very excited about this opportunity and knew we had some very, very good players. I mean, very special players, but very special people. And I used to look at them every day and I go, what makes them so special? And the one thing is they're competitive.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's no doubt about it, the most highly competitive people you'll ever meet. They had great eyes, which in our sport is pretty important, but they also had tremendous emotional stability. They were never too high, never too low. They were able to put themselves in the Olympic arena during a practice session in Chula Vista, California. You know, so they understood preparation. And then we had great teammates because everyone was an all-star. You know, I mean, you had everyone on that team deserved to be playing. And so you had to have people that understood their roles and would accept their roles. And I think that's what made that team so special is they were a machine, you know, very talented, but very close as a team, and taught me a lot about the game and about preparation, you know, because I know the one thing that I realized when we were practicing so much is that if I didn't challenge them, they'd get bored. Right?
Yeah.
And so I always tell young coaches, I said, you have to understand the balance between challenge, you know, and in state of mind, because if they have a high skill and a low challenge, they get bored. But if they have a low skill and you give them a high challenge, they get frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's important for young coaches to understand that who am I working with, and where are they in that spectrum? Because I think that's important. You know, I think sometimes we worry too much about the score with youth softball. I'd rather see them go out and teach the skills and not worry about the score. And who gives a darn? And it appalls me that all these young girls have rings on their fingers already, you know, and at 10 and under, and they're giving them a ring. You know, it's like I have to wait till, you know, forever to get that ring, and that's probably what kept me going. But great opportunity. So proud of being a part of that. There's nothing like representing your country, and I was just blessed because I also went through a very tough time in 2004 when lost my first wife to a brain aneurysm, and it was really this team that was kind of my safety net and, you know, helped me kind of get through a tough time.
Yeah. How do you deal with that? I mean, again, career-wise, this is maybe the pinnacle of your career to represent your country, and then to have that loss. How did you kind of move past that? You know, if you could, I guess at that time.
Well, I think that's where your faith comes into play. You know, if you understand and you know that there's life beyond what we do here, but you have to put your hands and your faith in God's hands, you know, and that's all I could do. I mean, there's a lot of questions you ask, you know, why me and why this and why that, but at the end of the day, you got a choice to either move forward or move backwards, you know, and I had to find a way. I had 2 kids. For the first time, I had to really become a father, meaning that I knew what the color of our checkbook was. You know, I maybe found out what they needed, because for all these years, all I did was get up and go to work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and most people don't realize that my first 21 years at Arizona, I commuted 72 miles one way.
Wow.
To work every day. Because my wife had a job. She was an accountant. She loved her job. So I said, well, I'll just commute for a while and see how this thing works, you know. And 21 years later, I was commuting. And so, yeah, it was a challenge. You know, it was definitely a very difficult time. And, you know, a couple of years later, I got a chance to meet my wife, Tina, right now, who has been a blessing for me. And, you know, we've been able to share some great moments now, being able to travel the world. And right now I'm consulting with the Italian national team. And so she's able to be a part of that. And she was able to be a part of my career at Arizona, you know, and I think that's what it's all about, because I realized that you have to have someone to share the ups and downs with. And, you know, I drove home for a while, and finally one day I realized, why was I driving home? Because there was nothing at home that I, was there for.
Yeah.
And so life kind of finds its own way. And I think a big part of it, I think Tina and I, one of our first dates was going to Mass on Ash Wednesday, so I got a chance to meet someone that their faith was important, because to me, that's a big piece of it. And then she knew nothing about softball. I mean, her first experience was the Olympic Games, in 2008. And so she didn't know whether you had to run to first base or you could run to third base first. So it was kind of interesting to have someone there that, number one, didn't know you, so didn't really care what you had done in your life. It's been pretty refreshing. And so COVID, I got a chance to teach her how to play golf, and that was fun. And so now I have a new partner to enjoy life with, and she has 2 boys, and I have a boy and a girl, and so we've got a little larger family. Just had 2 new grandkids here in the last couple of years, and so we have 4 grandkids, and beautiful place in the mountains in Pine Top on a golf course, and I live on a golf course here in Tucson. I mean, life's good. And then I'm still working part-time at Arizona as a special advisor to the athletic director. And so I'm getting a chance to work with our other coaches and mentoring them. And we started a monthly breakfast for all the head coaches. And so this coming Monday, I have our second breakfast with this group. And really, it's kind of fun to get them all in the room and talk about some of the challenges and trying to find some solutions and giving some feedback to administration. I think it's a big part of today's world because it's a challenge. I mean, I listen to the college sports talk, radio all the time, and this conference realignment and NIL and, the transfer portal. It's just like, I'm glad I got out of it before all this hit, but it is what it is. I mean, we have to learn how to navigate this. And I can't say it's a good thing all the time. I think it's, but right now I feel like it's a wild, wild west. So I hope we can get our hands around some of this stuff.
Yeah, it seems like, again, you retired in 2021. It seems like maybe outside of athletics, your life in general, you have much greater perspective. Is that what you see? Is that maybe what retirement has also provided for you, a chance to
absolutely
take it all in from that perspective?
Absolutely. I mean, it's well, one thing you realize is that, when you're in the bubble is the most important thing. And you make it more important than it really is. And now that I'm outside the bubble, you realize that some of this stuff that you used to worry about, no one else really cares. It's much of the pressures are self-inflicted. And so I think, life is a lot bigger than this game. And when I was in the game was bigger than life. And that it doesn't make any sense. And so I think, like anyone, you can't teach experience, because experience allows you to live through these challenging moments. And I've lived through some challenging moments, and I look back and I go, some of the things I would have changed and done it a little differently. And but to the most part, I look back at my life and I've been really blessed to do something that I love to do. Hopefully I've made an impact on some young kids. And I think I have. One of the things I started doing many years ago was in my planner, I would have everyone's birthday, and I never miss a kid's birthday. And so that's kind of my way of staying connected with all of these athletes, because I used to think I coached them for 4 years and they would leave. And then I realized when I started coaching softball that they never left. You were a part of their life forever. And that was the blessing of softball, is to be able to watch them grow into young women and have families and kind of enjoy that together. And so today that's kind of the fun part. Is I get up in the morning, first thing I do is I look who's got a birthday today. And that's the only thing I like about text messages, is at least I don't have to sit on a phone or a pay phone to call. And so, it's life is good right now. And I look back now and I wouldn't change anything now. I've learned some lessons that I could maybe have done it a little better, but I think that's what life is. I don't know many people that do it perfect the first time, including doctors. That's why they call it practice. So you got to be careful who you go to, but it's true. I just, God, I look back and I'm going, there were so many forks in the road that I could have taken the
Yeah.
wrong fork, but I just happened to take the right fork every time.
36 years. That's a lot of birthdays to have to remember. I know you said you have it written down, but are you doing multiple ones every day?
It pretty much is. There's some days there's 5 or 6, there's some days that there are 2 or 3, but it's yeah, and you know what, I'm not going to take credit on this idea because I got this idea from Ron Polk at Mississippi State.
Yep.
And my brother-in-law played for Ron back in the day with Rafael Palmeiro and Bobby Thigpen and Will Clark and Buck Showalter. But anyway, I was always impressed that Coach Polk would never miss a birthday or an anniversary, because my best friend married my sister. My best friend in college, I took him home too many times and he ended up marrying my sister. So my best friend's in my family. And I was always impressed that Ron Polk would never miss a birthday or anniversary. And I'm going, that's a hell of an idea. And it doesn't take much. It just takes, a little bit of effort on your part it makes people feel special. I know how I feel when someone sends me a happy birthday wish.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that's something that I learned, and I think it's a big part to help stay connected with your athletes. I think one of the things I love about Arizona softball is the tradition that we have, and that was all built in brick by brick, and you look back now and it's a pretty huge tradition. But I've got no one to thank but the players that have built that tradition. And so being able to stay in contact with them is a blessing.
Well, August 29th is your birthday. I'll be sending you a message to help brighten your day a little bit with your birthday coming up this summer. Again, so many numbers, so many things. Member of 6 Halls of Fame is mentioned. Is there one thing, one honor that in your mind is the honor, the thing that maybe you think of the most, maybe that people don't think about when they think about you?
Not really. There's not one thing. It's a culmination of a lot of things, and so I think every great moment that I had was a blessing in my life, and it has it's been like a tree that has built, for the final product. And I love the people. I think if there's one thing that I miss more than anything is just dealing with some of the people that I've had the pleasure of working under, some great athletic directors and some assistant coaches that, I need to thank them because they work just as hard as I have to build this legacy. But my time with USA Softball and Ronnie Isom, who was the team director, was a pretty special moment in my life because I never ever dreamed, I go back to when I first took the job in softball. George Young was a 4-time Olympian, won a bronze medal in Mexico City, trained for 16 years of his life. And I always used to wonder, George, how do you do this? I mean, you're training an entire year for one damn race. And I watch him out in the desert running every morning and every afternoon. And I said, how do you keep yourself going? He goes, well, every time the alarm rings, I think of the Russians getting up and they're not going to beat me. So I'm getting my butt out of bed and I'm going to train.
Wow.
And then I got a chance to put on the USA uniform and represent our country. And I just remember the first time being on foreign soil and listening to the national anthem. It changed completely that song in my head forever. And to this day, I get tears. I'm very emotional about our country, and very sad that not everyone feels the same way. But one of my greatest things right now that I've got going is I'm an honorary commander at Davis Mountain Air Force Base. So yesterday, Tina and I were out. There was a commander change. The commander that I was working with is now leaving, going to Alabama. They're bringing in a new one, and they had the ceremony. But I'm sitting there, and one of the soldiers are singing the national anthem, and it just brought tears to my eyes. I mean, it was unbelievable, And then they play the Air Force. Off we go in the Wild Blue Yonder, and I'm standing there, and all of these soldiers are singing it. Every one of them. It's like a chorus, and I'm going, man, this is. I mean, probably if I wouldn't have got into coaching, I would have either gone two ways. I would have been in the military because I love the discipline, or I probably would have been a priest because I love the opportunity to share and help others. And so you as you get older, you get a little more sentimental about all these opportunities you've had and kind of narrow them down as to why. And to me, it's the people, it's the players, it's the coaches, it's the former coaches that I've been able to coach with. I mean, I had a fun time just texting some of the College World Series coaches that are now at it and wishing them good luck. And we had our very first Pac-12 tournament in Tucson. We hosted the very first one, and that was kind of fun to be able to be a part of that. So my life's good right now, and we're Tina and I are getting ready to leave here soon. We're going to Vancouver for the Canada Cup with the Italian national team, and then back to Italy for the World Cup qualifiers. So still got my foot in the door, but not quite as hot as it used to be.
Well, you took the military and the priest, you put them together, and you became a coach, right? You had the discipline, you shared the stories, and you did everything. So you combined those two and became a coach. I could see why you're such a successful coach. Great messages here today.
Well, thank you.
And again, I love the perspective that you have, now looking back a little bit, and even during your career as well. As you said, just coaching is enjoyable. Coaching is fun. Coaching takes a lot of your time. So I really appreciate the perspective that you have, and incredible message, and wish you nothing but the best, and appreciate you joining us here today.
Same here, man. It's life is good. So every day's a gift. I thought my golf game would get a lot better, and I find out that the more you play that game, the more challenging it becomes. But it's been fun to be able to get up every day, and I always tell people every day's a Saturday now. I get up and decide what I want to do, and it's been fun. But take care of yourself.
All right. Hopefully you have a lot more rounds of golf in you.
You got it. All right. God bless.
Well, great story, great perspective for an outstanding coach there. Mike Candrea joining us, sharing his story with us now in his retirement, but still very busy on his way to Vancouver and to Italy as well. We thank you for watching today, and once again, invite you to subscribe to our show. Make sure you like this episode and also share it with your family and friends and whoever, again, likes great stories. This one, a great story of success, but also of perspective as well for a long-time head coach on the collegiate level. We thank you once again for watching and listening. We'll see you next time in the front row with Mike Vaccaro. Have a great day, everybody.